Night falls, and the magic of words is burning firefly like in the darkness. I'm the Gargoyle, your host for this evening session. Coming up in the darkness, I will be reading the second part of my never-to-be-published story, The Roishi Redemption. So sit back and enjoy. And as always, the focus is on the words, never on the person behind the camera. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing, ringing that bell, and telling your friends. I am the Gargoyle, your reader on the ledge. Chapter 3. Early morning in Hong Kong, and the faint, mist-covered sun had just risen above the horizon. It was a strange time to be awake, as I sat on the trellis balcony, looking over the once great city, while methodically washing myself. The streets were coming alive again, bit by bit, as people opened their armored doors and moved out into the early morning gloom. Shopkeepers started putting out their wares, but it was the everyday people I was watching with great interest. It had become an almost daily ritual, where people of all ages, races and beliefs started cleaning the streets from the previous night's carnage, putting out leftover fires, writing trash cans, and picking up papers. It was amazing to see how the tragedy of the red meteor had brought so many people back together. But then again, maybe they just wanted to feel normal again, even if it was only for a little bit. Soon the bustling sounds of a city thriving again drifted up to my balcony, and I decided I needed to stretch my legs again. And besides, my stomach was growling anyway. After last night's action, I never got around to get something to eat. I knew just the place to eat. Stretching out and yawning loudly, I finished washing myself and headed out. By 7 o'clock, the city was up and running again, with everyone wanting to make the most of the daylight hours before lockdown started. The red taxis, still running, were operating again, weaving in and out through the streets, as the food sellers already had their woks fired up and running. The smell of spices and herbs driving me to near insanity, I slalomed between the people's legs, moving as inconspicuous as any good cat does. Watch the tail there, buddy. Oi, remove your head from your ass, then learn to drive. No, please, just step on me, why don't you? It's not like I saved your collective butts every evening now, do I? I cursed and scolded my way through the now thronging streets, sticking to the main streets for now. Nobody was stupid enough to venture down the dark alleyways. You never knew what drooling cur or flea-infested vermin you would run into there. I happened to like my 9 lives exactly where they were. Thank you very much. In my run, I saw a couple of tables sitting near a sparsely packed out fruit store. I recognized them as a couple trainees from the far side of the island. It was strange seeing them so far out of their usual territory, but I guess they must have taken part in last night's rescue operation. They were in deep conversation, and I could see the worried looks on their faces, but I didn't bother to stop and check in with them. Food, now. Wet behind the ears, kittens, later. Feed me, Z, feed me now. My inner voice of reason moaned loudly in my ears, and I turned my attention away from the tables. There were other, more pressing matters to attend to. It didn't take me long, catching a lift on a passing cart to reach Baudem Tanyan. I had been fantasizing about their steamed pork buns for ages, but something made me stop in my tracks. The place was oddly quiet, with only a few locals sitting over their breakfast bamboo steamers. Familiar wailing of chefs? Check. Knife embedded in wall? Check. Kitchen staff holding an emotional support group meeting? Check. Instantly I knew what had happened as I sauntered past the distraught cooks. I peered into the kitchen and saw the utter carnage left behind. Food flung everywhere, steamers piled in a Byzantine-like manner. General chaos and nuttiness. No, this was not the work of a red-eye. Oh, no, no. The horrors still had some decency about them somewhere, some scrap of mercy deeply embedded in their pitch-black souls. This was something altogether worse. I paused, eyes narrowing as I saw a steamer basket rattle on the table, surrounded by a plethora of now empty and forlorn baskets. I sighed, shaking my head in despair before hopping onto the table. The basket grew quiet as it sensed my approach. Rolling my eyes, I lifted the lid and saw a rather large, fat, feline face down in the leftover bowel buds. To call the thing a street cat would have been an insult to actual street cats. It was mutant. It had to be, or its mother had horrible low standards when it came to choosing a suitor. Eat the food, lovey. Don't inhale it, I said in a sarcastic tone as I lifted the cat up by his collar. He had a distant look of pure bliss about him, while his mouth was glazed with fat and the remnant of what I suspect was once chicken. Spencer, the culinary scourge of many a once respected eatery in Hong Kong and the outer-lying territories. This plague pulled through a kitchen with little respect for decorum or basic sanitary standards. Just think of leaving a door or window open on the tiniest of cracks, and somehow this fat bastard will manage to squeeze his carcass through. The end result was usually a kitchen looking like the Battle of Okinawa, just somehow more chaotic and bloody. The Hong Kong Good Food Guide actually declared a fatwa against him and put a bounty on his more than well-rounded ass. But to no avail. Spencer's reign of terror carried on unabated. This malignant pest also happened to be my best friend. That last chef had no sense of humor, you know. I mean, who really cares if a few buns find a happy new home? Honestly. The multicolored ball of fluff moaned loudly as he smacked his lips and eyed another unfortunate victim hiding away in the basket in sheer terror. I smacked his paw and raised my eyebrow in his direction. Forget our diet, did we? I dusted the crumbs off him and shook my head in mock disgust. I'm a slave to my passions, and besides, the ladies love all this roundness. Spencer blushed and grinned sheepishly as I hugged him tightly. How are you doing, asshole? I laughed and shook my head. He may have had a weakness for the finer things in life, but there was no one I would rather have by my side. A friend to the bitter end was he. As long as the fine restaurateurs of Hong Kong keep me fed and well stocked, I'm living the dream, baby. Spencer pulled a bottle of Shaoxing rice wine closer with his leg and expertly popped the top. Speaking of, are you not worried about the chef finding you in here? I asked, chowing down on a steamed bun before my compadre could send it to its doom. No worries on that one. Last I saw, he was filling in a job application form to accounting school between his nervous breakdown spells. But you're looking good, man. Getting some sun, I see. I'm jealous. Yeah, you would if your fat ass ever left the kitchen, I grumbled under my breath between bites. What's that, dear? Oh, nothing. But I am a bit worried. There's a nervous tension in the air. Saw a few tabbies having a very serious-looking conversation on the way over here, though I didn't stop to ask them. Spencer ummed and ahed, looking deeply into the bottle of rice wine, as he had tried to avoid my gaze. Are you sure you don't want a drink? It's such a good vintage, and I feel terrible to be drinking alone here. Let me get you a bowl. I caught his tail with my paw and lifted his chin till we were eye level again when he turned around. It's going to suck having tried to eat with a broken jaw. Now what are we hiding, Talk to Daddy. I flashed Spencer a brilliant smile as he rolled his eyes and pushed my paw away. Jamelia is going to neuter me when she finds out I told you, and I need my boys for reasons. Oh, for bast's sake, how do you always manage to get things out of me? Today, cat, if possible. Though I adored my friend, it was always fun seeing him squirm now and again. Spencer downed a big gulp of the wine and licked his lips before reluctantly starting to talk. It's the frickin' weasels, man. You won't believe what they got their nasty little paws on. I made a silent motion for him to continue, liking to be home before Chinese New Year if possible. He gathered his thoughts again between another shot of wine. They claim, and you know how I rate that scum on the level of restaurant critics, that they have a gem of some sort that could neutralize or even break the power of the Junglai. What? I exclaimed, pulling Spencer closer by his collar. Why did we not tell us this? Because Jamelia scares the living hell out of me. Seriously, she'll shave my ass without a moment's hesitation. That, and she knew how you would react. And how is that exactly? I asked tensely. Spencer waved his paws up and down in front of me. Like this? She knew you would overreact and lose your mind over this. We thought it better to break it to you slowly. Maybe behind the security locked fence or so. What do they intend to do with this gem? I asked, pacing frantically up and down on the counter, mind racing at the possibilities. They want to make a deal with the Roishi. They want protection. Spencer replied, and I could see the worries in his eyes. Protection from what? They are not exactly shrinking violets now, are they? From the rats, Z. They have been losing territory in the sewers, and it won't be long before the vermin have them cornered and outnumbered. They are willing to give up this gem in exchange for us doing patrols down there, and some pest control now and again. Gods, if this is true, it could end the war in one night. It's too amazing to think about. My mind was going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The possibilities endless. Spencer placed a paw on my shoulder, trying to calm me down. Z, you know it's a trap, right? Even you must see this. And what if it's not? A chance to live in peace again, my friend. Isn't that worth risking everything for? And besides, the weasels would never dare risk double-crossing us. They have just as much as we to lose. No, it's not in their nature. Z. My friend's words of reason were falling on deaf ears now. When and where is this meeting being held? The quicker the better, for all of us. He shook his head and exhaled slowly through parsed lips. 2 days from now, in the Southern Region Territory sewers. They want all the chapter leaders there to discuss terms and conditions. Then we simply must be there. We have no choice in the matter, I exclaimed, knocking an errant pant off the counter. No, Z, no. We cannot have our entire command in one place. You know the rules. They are there for a reason, and you know it. Spencer tried protesting, but he was spitting into a hurricane. We will deal with anything that might happen, just like we've done so many times in the past. And I need you there, my friend, right by my side. I stared at the multicolored cat, hope dancing wildly in my eyes. Of course, you know I will, but please think this over. I don't like this one little bit at all. This stinks of rotten fish. Spencer might have been worried, but he answered without hesitation. The chance for peace. Can you imagine it? I have to go. There is still so much to do before we make the journey south. I will meet you by the cafe in 2 days' time. He never had a chance to say another word, just staring forlornly after me as I disappeared through the door, lowering his head and shaking it sadly. The war could be over in 2 days. Could you imagine it? It had been a hectic few days, and my paws were barely touching ground. I had so much to do. Least of all was to organize rookies for Overwatch the few days I was gone. It was not ideal to use barely tested recruits, but I had no choice in the matter. No chapter leader would want to miss out on this meeting. They would absolutely insist on being there. But there wasn't much to worry about, unless we had another hero trying his luck, or a mass breakout of survivors. Then all should be good for the following 2 days. The recruits just had to shepherd the odd lost soul that got stuck outside before lockdown. Get them safely home. A simple task. Yet, while I was relaying instructions to the recruits on their nightly routes and procedures, I kept thinking of this gem that the weasels claimed they had. My mind was all over the place, but just the thought of ending the war, it was beyond belief. To actually go back to a normal life without having to look over your tail the whole time, waiting for some slobbering horror to get you. It sent swaves of energy rushing through my furry body. Slow down, Z. You are not thinking straight. I usually listen to my inner voice of reason, but on this day, I just flat out ignored it. The possibilities overwhelmed my mind, and all rational thought was pushed to the back. Not that I liked dealing with the weasels, scaly thugs that they were. Heard they came ashore a few weeks after the red meteor fell, and soon claimed territory on the far side of the island. Anyone that was stupid enough to venture there had to deal with the charlatans and pay their steep taxes. Non-payment usually ended up with a sharp claw in the back and a soft splash in the ocean a few hours later. You cannot trust the weasels. Come on, Z. Use your goddess-given talent for common sense. The voice of reason wailed, but to no avail. I was too caught up in the moment. I was so scatterbrained that I almost walked straight into canine territory. They were by far the smallest faction on the island, but they controlled the grimy alleyways and maze of side streets in Hong Kong. Though the dogs were quiet lately, there had not been a flare-up between them and the Ruishi for what felt like ages now. One would do well not to venture into their domain. There had been many a time that I had to go fetch a recruit that got cute with them out of the alleyways, or what was left of them in some cases. No, the peace treaty between cat and dog still held, and I would like to keep it that way. Just before 4 on the next day, with all preparations completed and taken care of, I met Jamelia and Spencer in front of the cat cafe. The cafe was an old, abandoned diner that served as a sanctuary for all felines on the island. It was considered holy ground, and no dog, rat, weasel, or whatever denizen crawled in the dark dared cross its doorstep. We kept the place stocked with enough cans of kibble, dried cat food for the Philistines with a less delicate palate, scratch poles, even stuffed toys for any kittens seeking shelter. It was a home away from home. Jamelia and Spencer were sitting quietly on a crate outside, already waiting for me. The Siamese was pissed though. Any cat with eyes could see that. I glanced over at Spencer with a sympathetic look, knowing that the poor cat had already felt the sharp end of her tongue. Jamelia, I greeted, already looking for a sharp set of claws coming my way. Cat, she replied, with all the loving delicacy of an iceberg. She turned and stared daggers through my helpless companion as he winced away. You were not supposed to know about the Z. I kept you out of the loop for a reason. And why is that, pray tell, I asked, eyes scanning the surrounding areas. Even though it was still daylight, it never hurt to be alert. I needn't have worried. Just the usual pre-lockdown deliveries going on, and a few humans standing around, talking whatever humans talked about. Nothing out of the ordinary. But there was an energy on the streets, like something massive was about to happen, and every non-human creature on the island was holding its breath in anticipation. That is all for this evening session. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got some great authors coming up in the following weeks. Next week, I'm going to be working with the author Alan Jessup. The week after that, Peace Moray. The week after that, Paul Brown. And after that, Jane Buckley. I really hope you tune in for those sessions. As always, I am the Gargoyle, your reader on the ledge.